Meek Mill was supposed to meet with President Trump to talk about prison reform, but it did not happen. Here is the explanation of what happened according to Meek Mill's statement. He says, I was originally scheduled to meet to be part of a panel on prison reform at the White House to help shed light on the issues within the system. Unfortunately, the focus turned to the president and myself, which concerned me that it might take away from creating a positive result from today's discussions. As a result, I decided not to attend so that the focus would be solely on fixing our prison system. Most importantly, I remain fully committed to improving our criminal justice system. Thoughts, 5 words or less.
The responsible choice.
He didn't want to be used.
Trump doesn't do meek. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's not very meek. He doesn't like meek people.
No.
They're losers.
He did it.
Yeah, so.
I think it's good. I'm glad that Meek Mill, it's always super refreshing and also very, very wonderful when you see these rappers and these hip hop artists that are just so woke. can I not use that word ever again?
You used it.
I know,
Did you use it just now?
Yeah, I did.
I'm not sure, but did you?
I just said woke, yeah, I just said woke. But that they're responsible and they realize their reach of their fans and who's actually listening to them wholeheartedly. And for him to say that, look, I didn't want to have another Kanye situation or Steve Harvey situation where I go meet with Trump and
it's just a photo op.
Right, instead of us talking about something that matters, then it being, but then also I took issue with Jay-Z. I want to know what Jay-Z's reasoning for saying it wasn't a good look.
That's disputed.
Right, that is disputed because to be fair, everyone's sort of kind of saying that Meek had already made this decision and that the headlines kind of just ran with it because it's Jay-Z and it looks cool. But and also let's just say the headlines were right. It's okay for your friend who is older than you, who has much more life than you, and who has been in all sorts of businesses longer than you to say, hey, who's been an activist longer than you, to say, hey, this may not be the best look for our people. And things can be done in private as well.
Sure.
Right.
This is Van Jones got lit up on Twitter about this and about his support of this. And he was kind of smiling in a selfie with Candace Owens. And I think this would have possibly been a huge photo op. And remember what happened when the leaders of the HBCUs kind of stood in that picture and we haven't seen much or anything done. It was just kind of something that Omarosa orchestrated. And yes, it is always a big deal when you can have the ear of the president. But when you don't have the ear of the president, you just get to be another person who's like Blacks for Trump without the t-shirt.
Yeah.
You have to know when you're being used and when that picture of you is harmful. Right. Kanye taking screenshots of phone calls on Twitter was harmful to a lot of rappers. We don't even know what was said, or just like text messages. And
there's a lot of CEOs that were like in those early days, all the CEOs who were on those panels, the advisory boards and everything, they had to make that decision. But I always came down on the side of like, all right, anything you can do to help helps, right? And I don't know. I think he must have looked at it and just not like the optics.
Anderson .Paak came through and said,
I have the quote. He said, I think if Meek had his mind set to go and do what he had to do, I think maybe he should have did that. My mom was in prison for 7.5 years, and I know that's a big issue. That's a major issue, prison reform. That needed to be rectified ASAP. It's so much cheap labor that goes into it. It really does need to be magnified and looked at. And Meek is the man for that.
The president of the United States is the man for that. If we're being fair, it's like this unfair weight and pressure on a man who a lot of people did have to like come together to get him out of, unfairly out of prison, but fairly out of like an unfair situation.
Right.
But this is still on the president. This can still get done without a rapper telling you like his story. You can Google Meek's story and it can still all get done.
He had his conviction overturned by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. So it was a bad conviction. It was like a weapons charge or something. It was a parole violation. He got 4 years and he went to prison. And then they threw it out because of problems with the police officer involved in the investigation. So it got thrown out. So anyone's been wronged by the prison system. But then again, like the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, tried to get a prison reform thing. But the president's family's agenda is one that does not change sentencing.
Right.
And sentencing is a huge component of this. It is free labor, but people like the Kushners want to privatize prisons so they can make money off having more inmates, not less.